Hi, this is Trinesha Cottrell, and today I wanted to talk about stop settling. I know you're probably thinking, okay, what is making you do a video called Stop Settling? Is she talking about relationships again when she's single? Listen, you're going to stop getting on me because I'm single. Just kidding. No, but seriously. What made me want to talk about stop settling is I heard a pastor say in a sermon that I was listening to earlier this morning to that sometimes in our life we'll settle for things because they're better. We'll think, okay, this is better than, what we had. This is better than something that we've been through. This is better than, like, this house is better than the shed. Like, this this smaller house or whatever, this tiny house is better than the shack or whatever else. The shacks sometimes are converted into tiny houses. Okay, that's a bad analogy. But anyways, we will sometimes, and I don't want to say like, tiny houses aren't, like some cool looking tiny houses out there, anything like that. I'm just saying that sometimes when we're in a situation in our life, like we're at a job and we're like, I just want to be in a position where I can make such and such amount. Like maybe you make minimum wage and you're like, I just want to be able to make $12 an hour or $15 an hour, whatever, it is. And you'll be like, I just want to make that amount. Okay, making $15 an hour may be better, but it's not the best that God has for you. You go through a relationship and it's a toxic relationship, or the person was horrible for you and you were both not great for each other. It was just not a good fit at all. You meet another person who's a nice person, or they seem a little bit better. They might have the same characteristic traits, but they say nice things instead of being rude all the time. But their personality, they're not about action at all. They don't do any of the things that they said they were going to do. Same person. The only difference is one of them will tell you to your face and the other one behind your back. Maybe. I don't know. This is just an example. And so you'll think, oh, this guy is better because he's not saying rude things to me and making me feel crappy. So he's better than the guy before. But both of these guys are both not grace for you. He might be better, but he's not the best that God has for you. Sometimes we just settle in every area of our life because we get to a point in our life where it seems a little better than what we had. Just because they tell you to be grateful and thankful for all of the things that you have does not mean that you just settle for better. You settle for God's best. That's what you aspire to have. You don't settle for anything below what God intended for you in your life. And sometimes we forget that because of, I say this a lot and I hope a lot of other people don't take it offensive, but we have this broke Christianity mindset where it's like, oh, if you want more, you're not being thankful. No, you can be thankful and grateful and content with where you are. You can be content with the things that God has given you and blessed you with. So grateful and thankful and so appreciative. But that does not mean that you settle. God never settled. Jesus never settled for anything. He had standards and boundaries. He made sure that he had healthy standards and boundaries in his life. He made sure that he was about that God life, and that's how we should be in our lives. We should be aspiring to have God's best for us, not just better than the last situation, not just better than the last job, not just better than the last house, not just better than the last car. Like I used to do this thing, and I feel comfortable saying this because I feel like a lot of people do this. I, back in the day, drove this beater, right? And I'm not getting on, any type of car. The car got me from point A to point B. It had a lot of issues, things like that, like cars normally do. It just, and I was like, okay, well, this car, I had a crank window on the first car, and then, it just stopped working. I was like, okay, well, then I got another car, and the car was another beater, but it was better than the first car. And I was like, okay, I'm going to settle right here with this car because I'm content with just having this. Not like I wanted to aspire to get my dream car. Not that I'm saying I was going to worship or idolize the car, but I never even considered in that season to even want better than just another car that was working. Like, yes, it's good to be appreciative. Yes, I should be, thankful and grateful that the fact that I have any car or vehicle at all. That is a blessing in itself. But just settling in that season and settling for just that's it because it's a little bit better is, I think, where we have to start pushing for more. We have to start knowing that God, that's nothing to God. Like, and I'm not saying I needed to just go from a beater to to some kind of high quality, super, like, I don't want to say, I don't know what you call high class cars or whatever else, but it's not that I'm saying I had to be in like one of the like foreign cars or something like that in order for me to feel like, okay, well, this is what I'm aspiring to have, and I'm not going to be content without it, or I'm not going to be happy until I get it. Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about sometimes in life when we're going through a season or when something's happening to us and we make it out, we really feel like, okay, I've made it out of this, so this feels good. Like, I feel content in this area. I feel like I could stay here. I feel comfortable. We get so comfortable in a season, in an area, with a person, in a job, that we don't even think about aspiring for more. We don't even think about going for more. We don't even think about the fact that that's not even God's best for us. That's just better than the last thing that we had. And I don't think, and I'm not saying that you just jump ahead and you rush through life to success. Like on day one, you get successful. That happens exceptionally. I mean, it's the one exception of a person, that gets famous in one day. But I want to live in a life of longevity. I want to live in a life that God intended for me. And nothing that God does is like super fast, like quick and easy, quick and fast, just like instant gratification. It's always a process. I might say, oh, I aspire to have a Porsche 911 coupe, but I'm not expecting to get a Porsche 911 coupe tomorrow. I might get a Porsche 911 coupe next week, next month, next year, or at the end of the year, whatever else. But I'm not going to settle and say, oh, because this this car is better. That's the only thing I ever aspire to have, because it's better than the last thing. And nothing's wrong with my car. I'm just giving examples because I felt like the car was a good example, because back then I didn't even think about driving anything good. I didn't even think about being in a better car. I didn't even think about that being a possibility at all. I just was so, you know, even growing up, I was this way. I don't know why I had this weird relationship with money, but I literally would be like, "Oh no, I'm not going to ask for anything because I don't want to make it seem like I'm asking for too much." It would be things that I would really want, and I would never ask for it growing up. I was just that kid that was just content with whatever I got. If I might have wanted something else, I might have thought that something else was nice. I might have, really liked something else, but I just never wanted to ask for it because I never felt like I deserved anything better, ever. And so I just kind of stayed there, like, okay, this is good. I'm gonna be good with this. And I would lie to myself and say, oh, this is, sorry, I got something in my eye. I would lie to myself and say, okay, this is just me being appreciative. I have to be content with the things that I have. And I in my mind thought I could never want more than that. Like, I never knew that that was an option. I always thought that that was just me being, would have been greedy, or that would have been me being like just unhappy or unappreciative of the things that I had in life. But that, wanting something better does not make you unappreciative. That makes you someone that knows what you want. That means that that I don't want to say that you deserve better, but I use that term loosely because I know a lot of religious people don't like the term deserve, because really we don't deserve God's grace and mercy. I understand that. But I'm saying, those materialistic objects are nothing to God. That's just a little tiny thing. God created everything. He's been here forever, since the creation of everything. So there's nothing that's too big or too small for God. God, that Porsche 911 coupe is nothing to God. What am I going to do with it? How am I going to benefit the kingdom with it, though? Do I just want it for a greedy, selfish reason, or do I want it because I aspire for more? That's what you really have to ask yourself. And the settling thing and being content with broke Christianity has to end, because we have to start seeing Christians winning. Because I feel like a lot of the younger generation and people in society would be more susceptible to having a relationship with God if they knew that they didn't have to be down and out and losing everything and really broke in order to have a relationship with God. I'm not saying having a relationship with God is all about material objects, but we don't have to only show people, that are not living, you know, living the life that they desire. That you always see someone say something about God that's like, has nothing. And I think it's great if you could still love and worship God if you have nothing. But I also think it's important for us to see that there are a lot of successful Christians in the world. It's not just like you have to be broke to be a Christian. Like, I used to think that was a thing because I thought that wanting more meant that you were greedy. I really did believe that growing up. And I think that's the misconception that a lot of people have. And the reason that why a lot of people like kind of are like, I kind of want to, but I like having all of these things. If you're idolizing a thing, then that's not the right mindset to have if you want to live a life of abundance, because God should be the most important thing, and those things are just added bonuses to your life. I wrote some notes, of course. Yesterday I did not write a lot of notes, and so today I guess I made up for it because I wrote that page and that page and that page. I was in this page, but it's not really that much on there. It's just a couple words at the bottom and some things at the top. But yeah, I was writing my little heart out today. And so the story that the pastor gave about, staying where you are and not seeking something that's better was the story of, of course, it's Moses and, Egypt and the Israelites and all that other stuff and Pharaoh. And the pastor just started talking about how, they kind of just settled. They just wanted to be free. God was going to take them to the land flowing with milk and honey. They wanted to just be free. That's it. They weren't even concerned about better, like God's best for them. They were just concerned about better than being a slave, better than the life that they used to live. And the pastor said this is one of the most dangerous areas in a Christian's journey, because we will pray, God, get us out of this relationship. God, take me away from this job. God, take me to, allow me to do this with my life. And we stay there. We get out the toxic relationship and it's like, okay, I'm content being right here where I am. I'm content here. Or you meet somebody who's a little bit nicer or seems like a nice person, but still doesn't want you. And you're just like, okay, well, this person's better. It's not God's best for me, but let me go ahead and settle here. The job pays a little bit more. So you're like, oh, because it's a little bit more money, even though it's not what I really want to do, let me just settle here because I'm just going to stay here for 20 years because this is better than what I used to have. We really get in our own way. I know I say that a lot, but seriously, we really get in God's way. God is trying to work miracles in our life, like miracle signs and wonders. And we literally settle for nothing. This nothing to like, in comparison to what God can do in your life, we literally settle for nothing. Like, this is nothing to God. I settled for God getting me out of a relationship, and God got me out, and I was just like, okay, I'm content being single. I'm just going to settle in the single season. And God's like, no, you're going to be with somebody. I have a kingdom spouse for you, the person that you were supposed to be with in the first place. And I don't want to say I'm the reason why this person had to wait and be single all the time. If it's my fault, I'm sorry. But if you miss your opportunity, God will give the opportunity to somebody else. So I'm surprised the person hasn't ended up with somebody else. But anyways, I just literally was like, I'm content being single. I don't ever have to be with anyone else ever again, God. Thank you so much for getting me out of that relationship. And God is like, hold up. Who said this was all I could do? Why are you really feeling like I'm like man? Because, a man can only do a little bit of something. And, I was listening to a Les Brown speech earlier, and he said something like, if the only problems that you have are from a man or from men in general, like not just in a woman's stance or a man's stance, but, in general, like human beings, if it's from a human being, then you don't really have any problems. Now, if you have a problem that only God can solve, that's a real problem. And that's how you know that God is working in your life, because only He can handle that situation. I don't know why I remember that part, but okay. But yeah, it's like we really get in this comfortable place. Like we just get stagnant. We want to stay where we are. We feel like this is good. I don't have to do anything else with my life. This is good. I don't have to want anything else. And we lie to ourselves and try to make it seem like, well, I don't want to be ungrateful or unappreciative. You're not being ungrateful or unappreciative. You're being unbiblical when you're just settling. I didn't even know that was in the Bible. When you are settling for less than what God intended for you, you are being unbiblical. You are not reaching your full potential. It's a verse in the Bible. I wrote it down somewhere, but I have so many notes, I probably can't find it. But I will give you like a quick gist of it, because I really, yeah, it could be anywhere on here, because it really was. Yeah. And now I'm going to lose my thought process because I can't even remember what. But yeah. Anyways, if I remember it, I'll say it. If I don't, oh well, it wasn't important then. Because if it's important, I will remember it, and then I'll be able to say it or whatever else. Okay, so yeah, sometimes we just settle. And there is a part in the Bible, that's what I was going to say, that says something along the lines of, you are supposed to be, working, and you're supposed to be taking advantage of the things that God blessed you with. You're supposed to do the most that you can with the things that God has given you. You're not like, there was a story in the Bible, and this is probably isn't the quote or the verse that they were talking about in the speech, but this is the one that comes to my mind, is when God gave the three farmers like some land or something like that. And then the first farmer, he sold it or did something with it. It ended up getting like 10 back or something. He sold it 10 times. I know the numbers are all wrong, but you're going to get the gist of the story. Okay. I promise. And so, so the first farmer, he sold, the 10 whatever, 10 pieces of land, 10 whatever it is, and he got like 10 times the amount of things. The second person, sold 5 times, and they got 5 times back the things, that they sold. The last person, he just sat on the thing that God gave him. He appreciated the one thing that God gave him and did absolutely nothing with it. He said that he called himself being a good steward of the things that God blessed him with, but he didn't do anything. God gave him a gift. God gave you the oil. He gave you this purpose on your life that could literally prosper you. It could give you everything you need in your life, and you were sitting on it. You're settling in that season and calling yourself a good steward. A real good steward of God's blessings is someone that is taking the gift, the blessings, the oil that God gave you, and using it, utilizing it to help others, utilizing it to make your life everything that God created it to be. Everything that God's given you, you should be able to multiply it times 10. It should not be something where you just sit there stagnant in your life, comfortable, because you feel like you're being grateful for the things that God blessed you with. Being grateful means being a good steward in all areas of your life, not just settling for anything. God never intended for you to just settle for the next upcoming job because you need money. I'm not saying you don't take a job and you just lose everything. I'm not talking about that. You gotta pray to God and see what get discernment from Him, so He could tell you the decision to make on big things like that. You need to make sure that you are really seeking His face. When it comes to a relationship, you shouldn't just be settling for the next guy that treats you a little bit better than the toxic guy. Like, you need to be treated at God's very best. God intended for you to be loved like Christ loved the church. If that man is not willing to put forth an effort and honor and respect you, or treat you the way that God intended for you to be treated, you don't need to be with him. He doesn't even need to know what your number is. He doesn't even get to be around you, feeling your energy, sucking the life out of you, because you got too much energy to give to the things that God is trying to get you to pour into. Too many things in your life and too much purpose on your life for you to stop and be stagnant because of somebody else that came into your life that doesn't even appreciate being in your presence. And I don't mean it in like a you're better than somebody else kind of way. I mean that person's not grace for you. And because they're not grace for you and they're going through a different season of their life, that energy that they have is going to pull from you. And, I'll call it grace. The grace that God placed on you is not going to mesh well with their grace. It's not going to mesh well with the season that they're in. You keep on thinking, why does it feel like I'm going backwards? Because you keep trying to go back and get somebody else to bring them where you're supposed to be. God has you in a totally different position because he has a different story for you. He has different things that he wants for you. Some things that he wants to bless you with, he can't bless you with it with that person that you keep trying to bring in the next season with you, whether it's a friend, whether it's somebody that you work with, or it's a potential romantic partner. You cannot get to where God is trying to go you if that go and take you. Mm, if that person is not graced for you, you can't take them where you're going as badly as you want to. Everything that you're doing the right way will go wrong. And it'll be because that person's not graced for you. Everything that you try to do, when you manipulate, when you do whatever it is that you're doing, is not going to work because that person is not graced for you. You keep on trying to make things fit that don't fit. When it's God, it flows. You don't have to worry about the stoppage. You don't have to worry about the oil stopping. The oil on you is just going to flow all over the place. It's going to be an overflow. When you are being obedient to God, when you're serving God, when you're with the person that you're supposed to be with, when you're in the job or the position, when you're doing the things in obedience and being a servant, when you are intentional with your life and seeking God's face above everything else, the oil that God places on you overflows, which only is fitting that the person that you're with, it would just flow, that the job that you're in would just flow. I went this one place that God told me to go. God said, I need you to work at this job. And I said, God, I don't have credentials for this job. Or I think one of the jobs I had credentials for, but it was like, I was kind of iffy about it, but God was 100% sure about this one job. And I was like, okay, God, I'm going to go there, but I don't know. Why did I go to this interview? And everything that I said that God placed on my heart for me to say for this job was exactly the same things that they were looking for the person that they were trying to hire. God literally lined it up. So, like, when I tell you, when God writes a story, I mean, it's literally like butter. It's like butter, baby, when God writes a story, because it melts. It flows. It's like an ebb and flow. It is so perfect. Like, nobody writes a story like God. Nobody. And I know we try to make it seem like, oh yeah, well, maybe if this person does this, maybe if I did this. Listen, you can't stop what God is trying to do in your life. Not one enemy can stop it. No weapon seen or unseen could ever come in the way of what God purposed you for. There have been people that have tried to stop me from doing things in the past, and since God was in it, no matter what they did, nothing sabotaged it. Nothing could stop what God was doing in my life. I I was going through like this weird period in my life, and I was going through like kind of like a little heartbreak thing or whatever. And I say little because it wasn't something that should have been a big deal, but I was disobedient to God with timing and everything. And so I ended up being more heartbroken than I really should have been in that season. And God introduced me to this guy, and this is so funny because this is how you know it's God. I was literally like, God, I'm not going to date anybody like this unless this. And I wasn't trying to tell God, hey, they got to be like this in order for me to date them. I just was trying to make sure that I had proper standards and boundaries, and I wasn't just, doing what I wanted. I was making sure that I was being obedient to God. I was making sure that I wasn't going to go against my ethics or my morals, to be with somebody or to date someone or get to know someone. And so God's so slick. This is how slick God is. While I was hurting, while I was going through the season, and I'm not saying that God just introduced you to a whole bunch of random people who don't, who aren't going to do anything or be in your future. I'm just saying that I feel like God knew that I was hurting, and he knew that this person was going to bring like some sort of light to me. They were going to make me, laugh. They were going to be there in the in-between stage before I really got back to being single, before I really just, I was in a position where I was strong enough to just do it on my own. Like, God knew I was really struggling in this one moment because I really liked this one guy, and it didn't work out. And I was really feeling like, oh my gosh, God, it just seems like this. And I was praying about it and everything else. And God just introduced this other random guy into my life. And I had known him, but I didn't really know him like that. And so, like, I knew his type of personality, and he was a nice person and stuff like that, but I didn't really know that much about him. And so God just the other guy, he had said something. The guy that I really like had said something, and he was just like, oh, I can't do this. And he didn't say he couldn't do this with me. He said he couldn't do something. And I was just like, oh, and I was just feeling so like, not disappointed by him, but disappointed in myself. And I was just really beaten up on myself. Like, oh, I can't believe that I would even put myself in a situation to be vulnerable, to even feel like I want to like somebody or anything else, when I really have been telling myself I don't want anybody. I don't want to be with anybody. Like, I couldn't protect myself from it. And I was so angry at myself. Like, how could I let myself be a little vulnerable? How could I let myself like this person? This is so unfair. And I was just really in my feelings. And I was like, God, this would be the only way that I would, date someone like this. And literally every single thing that I said, the person did. And I was like, okay. And I was like, God, is this okay? And God was like, yes. And so I ended up being cool with this person. And while I was like going through, I was just like, okay, well, I'm just not going to worry about it. I need to just do whatever it is that I need to do. But I was really feeling like the struggle inside internally. And God knew I was having a moment. And he like introduced this person who really like made me smile, who really was considerate of my feelings, who really was about action. And the only thing was, like, we weren't in the same season. Like, I was in a position where I was feeling like, okay, I think I'm ready for this. And the other person wasn't ready for that. So we weren't a good fit in that way. But the person was like, literally, I will say this to this day, is like one of the few men that I respect. Seriously. And I feel like God did that. And it flowed so seamlessly because God knew that I needed that in that season. It wasn't like the person was going to be my kingdom spouse and I was going to end up with them or anything like that. But it was perfect timing. It was just like God was like, okay, I know. Like, I really was trying so hard. Like, okay, God, I'm going to just do the right thing. I'm going to heal the right way. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And God's like, you're doing all of those things, but you're still struggling and you need help here. Let this person help you. And they really did help me in that season. Like, they were compassionate and understanding, in the way that I needed, and not just in the way that they were pretending to be compassionate and understanding for other people. They were really genuinely a good person. And they were honest about everything that they wanted, needed, whatever else. And I was just like, this is what I would need and want. And they were super like, I mean, you could tell that his mom just raised a really, really great guy, And so I feel like that's how it is with God. When God does stuff in your life, it really just flows. It's unexplainable. He just makes it happen at the right time, in the right place, in the right scene. Like, you just have all the right credentials. You don't even think, even if you don't have the credentials, you just say all the right things in the interview, the exact things or answers that they're looking for to hire you on the spot. You literally don't have to do anything but be obedient, and God does the rest of the work. Whew. The way that God moves in my life, every time he does something, I'm just so surprised. It's almost like it's almost like I really do get spiritual amnesia. And this is Michael Todd's phrase that is used completely different than I'm using it. But I have to make sure that I give homage to the person who created that term, because I don't want to make it seem like I just came up with this, even though I thought I did, because I didn't realize it was 2 years ago in one of his sermons he had said that. But listen, now that we know it was his phrase, I'm still going to use it, but I'm going to make sure I say that it came from Michael Todd, used in a different way. Okay, that way people know. And so I really get spiritual amnesia. My term means where God just blessed you so immensely. He's done so many things for you in the past. You go through a season, or you do something in life. You're just living life like normal. And God comes along and just blesses you out of nowhere. He gives you, and not just a regular blessing. It'll be something like he just came through on the 11th hour. He came through. He gave you something that you always desired, something you always wanted, but it was something that you actually needed. Something that you actually needed in your life, God gave you. And it was something that you wanted. So your desires were actually God's desires for you. And when it happens, because you were in a season of waiting, because you were in a season of pause, because you have been through a rough time or whatever else. When the blessing happens, it's like, like, oh my gosh, God, you're so good. I can't believe that you did that. And it's like, I know how good God is, but it's almost like you just forget how amazing God is. And I always thank God and bless him regardless if I'm waiting on pause, waiting for instruction, whatever it is that I'm doing in my life, I'm always telling God how thankful I am. And when the blessing comes, it's just like, what? Like, you're blessing me? Like, really? I just get so surprised every single time. Like I don't know God. Like, I didn't know that God was going to come through. Like, I didn't know that he was going to do what he said he was going to do. Like, I didn't know that God is the God that he cannot lie. Like, I didn't know that God was going to make a way out of no way. Like, I didn't know that God, if God is for you, he's more than the whole world against you. I really have this real shock on my face. Like, I just can't believe that God did this. For me, I just can't believe it. And it's so, that's how God is though. He really does the impossible. When you think that there's no way, like you don't see how it's going to happen, he comes through all the way through. Like, when I say my God comes through, you don't even understand. Like, these videos are supposed to be about self-care, healing, and self-love. And I really truly feel like, and I know some people are going to be like, why don't you just put God, self-care, self-love, and healing? Because I feel like the reason why I love myself is because I have the love of God. If I didn't rededicate my life to God, I wouldn't even know how to love myself. God is number one above everything else. God is the person who gives me instruction over my life to show me how I'm supposed to be living. I wouldn't even know how to love myself without him. I wouldn't even know how to heal if God wasn't in there healing those broken pieces of me. If he wasn't putting those things back together by allowing me to grab things along my journey. I wouldn't even be here in this position in my life, in this seat, if God didn't come and guide and reconstruct and redirect my entire life. Like, you don't even understand. There's no way I could even do self-care or think about taking care of my mental health or taking care of myself if I didn't know that God had healthy standards, Jesus had healthy standards and boundaries. If I didn't know that God cared about me, I wouldn't even think about doing self-care. I would just think it would be frivolous. I would just think it would be for no reason. Like, what is the reason why I would even do this? But because of God, I know how to love myself. And do I mess up sometimes? Yes, you're not going to be perfect. We're not God, And when it comes to healing, because of God, I can heal. God can heal every single part of me. He can fill that empty space in my soul that I thought that all of these worldly things was ever going to fill me up. They were going to be able to fill me up. But only God was able to do that. The reason why I'm healing is because he introduced and redirected me to places and videos and books and people who helped me heal in the moments where I needed to be healing. He gave me everything that I needed so that I can grow, so I can learn, so that I can heal properly. Not just cover it up, not just act like things are okay. He wanted me to be healed inside and out, you know? And I just, when I feel it, I just have to go in. That was not where this video was going to go. I had like all these notes and everything. And I don't know why I write all these notes because I never use them. Like, I will say like one phrase and then there might be something else that I pick up and I'm like, oh yeah, I did say that. But for the most part, it's just like the spirit just be moving and that's it. I don't remember anything else. Mm-mm-mm. So there was something that this pastor said in another sermon, because I listened to like, and I'm not saying it like in a humble brag kind of way. I'm just saying it so that you know when you're like, oh, is this the same sermon or a different sermon? It's a different one. I listened to a few different or so sermons today, and it's so crazy to me. Even when I say it out loud, I'm trying not to cry right now. I never ever thought. I never thought. Oh my gosh. Now I'm gonna mess up this makeup. See, this is probably why I didn't wear makeup in the other videos, because I don't know how to do this the proper way. But whew, every time I talk about, oh my gosh, see how careful I was because I'm so clumsy. I would poke myself in the eye for real, like trying to be cute and do it the right way. I would be the one that would literally end up losing my eyesight because I'm trying to do it the proper way on this video. And so, like, every time I think about the goodness of God, oh my gosh, or I think about how God really has changed my life, you don't even understand. I would have never imagined that I would be sitting there, I mean, binge watching sermons or listening, because I put them on my podcast. And so when I'm listening to podcasts, I'll go through and I'll listen to sermons and stuff. And so literally I'll be, oh, sorry. This is a hot mess. I can't even see anything because the makeup is like in my eye now, but it's all good. Whew. Hopefully that didn't ruin anything. I don't know how it works. And so, anyways, I never thought that I was going to be the type of person that literally binged watch sermons, that literally would be excited about going to church, that would be in Bible study or church every week. I never thought that I was going to be the type of person. I never thought that I would feel like I wanted anything more. I never even thought that was possible. You know, I never even thought that I could have more than what I had. I thought that, just accepting bare minimum or just accepting and settling for things in my life was me being, a good steward. I thought that that was me being appreciative, and it wasn't. It wasn't at all. All it did was make me settle for less than God's best for me. All it did was make me settle on the journey instead of continuing on the journey that God set forth for me. All it did was just make me comfortable instead of pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. It didn't even bring out the best in me. It didn't make me the person that God was going to create me to be or created me to be. It literally held me back because I thought that I was doing the right thing. So when I heard stop settling and how it can be easy to settle there, I really reflected on my life and some of the things that I settled for in the past. And whether it's a relationship, a job, a car, whatever it is, I really settled. Even in my relationship with God, I was like, I pray every once in a while, like, God, please let the traffic move fast, Oh my gosh. I really was like, you know, something bad would happen or something. I'd be like, God, please let this happen. If you do this, then I promise I'm going to go to church on Sunday. No, but for real, I really was that type of Christian. And so I was just like, it was like a choice. It wasn't really like, oh yeah, I'm going to be intentional about my relationship with God. I was like, well, I'm Christian. I was baptized when I was, real young, 12 years old. And so I was like, oh yeah, I'm baptized. I pray occasionally. I go to church, since I'm not like living at home and I'm out on my own. I go to church every once in a while, so I'm good. And God knows my heart. I try to pull one of those, like I was one of those Christians. And so when I rededicated my life to God and I was really like, God, whatever it is that you want me to do, I'm going to do. I had no idea that God was going to literally change me from the inside out. I didn't know that God was going to shape my heart into the heart that it is now. I didn't know that God was going to make me want to be in a relationship ever again. I was like, God, hold on. Like, I said, I want to do whatever it is that you want me to do. But, are you sure? Because I could be like the best Apostle Paul that you ever had in your entire life. Like, me and you could be like this, like I was really trying to convince God for real. Like I was so serious about this. Like I was like, God, I could just, see, look, this is what I can do on my end. I will do this, this, and this. And then since I'm doing this, I'll be focused. I can do this. I can work this place. I can go this place. I have to worry about somebody else. You got the best of me. I'm smiling and everything else. I was smile. Man, when I first was single, when I was, first rededicating my life to God, even now I still smile. But, before God told me I was going to be in a relationship, I really felt like nothing could touch me. Like, I don't know if that makes any sense, but I just felt like unstoppable. Like, I was just on this cloud by myself, like, yes, yes, it's raining. Like, it could be raining, it could be thundering, it could be storming, it could be a flood warning. It didn't matter what was happening around the world. Like, I was just like, I'm good. I'm by myself. Like, I was so happy. And then God, with so much joy and so much peace. And then God one day told me, look up, like, listen, you're going to be in a relationship. And I saw this guy. And I don't know if God was just saying, look up, like, listen, I understand that you want to be in a relationship with me, but you have to live your life. Like, you check with me, like, for discernment. You stay focused on me, but you can't live in this comfort zone of just being content right here. We got things to do, and when I looked up, I was like, oh, wow, I didn't even know that guy was cute. Like I really didn't even notice. I was just in my own little world. Like I'm not worried about it because, I'm just by myself. I was really, really feeling that error. I was really like, okay, good. I don't have to like nobody. I don't have to worry about if somebody gonna like me or not. I don't have to worry about somebody liking or not liking my hair. I don't have to worry about the outfits. I don't have to worry about compromising. I don't have to worry about dying to myself. I could be selfless with other people because it's an option. I'm out and about and I like helping people. Like I would go to the grocery store and just be like, let me help you with your bags. Oh, you need help with this? Like I was just going around just being super helpful and serving a whole bunch of people because it just brought me so much joy. And then God said, you're going to be in a relationship. And I said, I felt this dark cloud behind me. Just kidding. No. Let me stop. No. I was like, okay. Like I was super afraid. Like, I'm not gonna lie. I was real afraid. And not because, biblically you shouldn't be afraid of anything. Like, it's good to, people say it's healthy to have a little bit of fear. Like, no, I was literally, like, if I cursed, I literally felt like my stomach dropped to the bottom of my feet. Like, I was like, are you sure this is what you want, God? Because, like, and then I started trying to convince him. I was like, I do all of these things right now. Like, I'm like, I didn't even know I could be this good. God was like, no, because yes, you're doing good by yourself. With this other person, it's going to benefit the kingdom. And when God put it like that, you can't really like convince God otherwise. It's not like, oh yeah, God, I had this idea in my head of how my life was going to look like, and your idea really doesn't matter. It was like, okay, I have to be obedient and listen to God. And then I just got beside myself and I really just was doing the most, but like normal. And so, and God had to put me in check and humble me real quick. And so I really had to now I just feel like, I don't want to say like a normal person. I still feel happy, but it's just like I'm waiting for something to happen. It's like, I know I always give horror movie analogies, but it's just because I was such a horror movie junkie back in the day and I just loved horror movies. But it's kind of like I'll be happy and I'll be walking around and I'll be like, ooh, like sometimes I'll be singing a song in my head and I'll just be walking and smiling, and it's just like, it's like 70 degrees and sunny in my head every single day, even when things are happening around me. And I'm like, oh, this is so great. Oh, the clouds are so pretty. Oh, look at it. It's like a rain cloud. It's so cute. Oh, look at the sun behind the cloud. Look at the trees. Oh, look at the hills over here on the side where the farms and things are, or whatever else, And I'll just be like, oh, God just makes some beautiful creations. And then in my mind, I'll think about you're going to be in a relationship one day. And it's kind of like, like now I'm into it. But in the beginning, like this is how I felt. And it was kind of like, even now, sometimes I think about it and I'm like, am I going to be ready for it? Am I going to be strong enough to handle this? Because before I wasn't. Even when I thought I was ready, I was not strong enough. I didn't do all the right things. I failed every single test. I did everything wrong with the one person that I liked after the long-term relationship. And it's just like, am I even gonna know how to act? You know? And so anyways, it just kind of felt like every time I would hear the saying, you're gonna be in a relationship, in my head, I would literally think about in a horror movie, you know how they get all suspenseful and they play the music and then something jumps out at you and you're like, that's how I felt. That's really how I felt when I would hear that in my head, like you're gonna be in a relationship and be like, and I'd be like, oh, like my heart be beating all fast and everything. I'd be like, oh my gosh, you did not have to jump out like that. But yeah, but the nowadays the jump out part is like real good because they don't just like crescendo the music and then the person jumps out. It's like they crescendo the music and you think something's gonna happen and nothing happens, and then by the time you go, oh, and then it's like, oh, you're like, okay, that's how you gonna do it now. But yeah, that's literally how they do it, and so that's how I felt. Sometimes I still feel like that. Like I feel like I'm in a good position where I feel like I'm okay with the idea of being in a relationship. I'm good with the idea of being in a relationship. I feel like because I know it will benefit the kingdom of God, because I know that it's for God's benefit and it's not just about me or the other person, because I know that, you know, God's relationship isn't a toxic relationship. It will actually be me being treated the way that I'm supposed to. And I will be in a healthy headspace and a healthy, like I will be the healthiest version of myself so I can give the best of myself to the person that I'm with. You know, not just, you know, the broken or hurt or unhealed version of me. I will actually be in a good place where I actually feel content with myself, where I actually love myself, where I actually healed from childhood trauma, where I actually, you know, broke some generational curses, you know, things like that that really truly matter to me. I've been able to do now that I actually know my purpose. It's like the idea of being with someone else doesn't feel like my life would be ruined or like, you know, I would have to give up my whole life for this person. It feels like it would be beneficial for both of us, you know, and that makes me feel a lot better. It makes me feel like I could get behind this idea. You know, it makes me feel like, okay, when you put it like that, I could see that. Because before, I really felt like relationships where you just are miserable in a relationship. Like, unless the other person is happy, you will be miserable. And you just kind of have to live in misery for the rest of your life. And God was like, that's your worldly relationship you're talking about. Don't be talking about my kingdom relationship like that. Like that's not what I intend for any of my children. I intend for you guys to all be happy and have joy and peace. And yes, you're not going to agree on everything, but it will not be like some reality TV show. It will not be like misery. It will be hard times and good times. It will be, you know, it will be a journey. There will be trials and tribulations, and you guys will have each other. If you stay focused on me, I will help you and guide you in any way that I can, and you will be fine. And I'm like, okay. You know, I feel great knowing that God's with me this time. That I'm not, I know God was with me the entire time, but knowing that God really is there with me. Like he's got my back. So regardless of what I'm going through, regardless of what happens, I can always call on God. I don't have to just, you know, be in a empty corner somewhere or waiting until the whole house is asleep to go cry in the bathroom every single night. I could actually talk to God, actually have somebody that's there listening. The person that I'm with, you know, I'm hoping and praying will be somebody who will listen to me when I have something that's going on, when something's troubling me, when, you know, I don't feel safe or seen. they will seek to listen to me and understand what it is that I'm going through or how I'm feeling, and know that my feelings are valid and not just brush it off. You know, that's what my hope is. And so, in conclusion, because I don't want this to be too long and it's already pretty long, stop settling for less than God's best for you. Stop settling for better when God has so much more that He wants to bless you with. You know, sometimes when you go through that hard time in your life and God gets you through, you're just like, whoo, I'm glad I made it through that. You don't even think about the next stage. But God's saying there's so much more that I have for you. There's so much more that you could do. There's so much more that I purposed you for. So don't just settle in the journey. Don't just stop the journey and settle because it's a little better than the last time. Get everything that God has for you. I want it all. I know I say that and you're like, what? When I say I want it all, and I got to get to clapping, but listen, when I say I want it all, I want everything that God has for me. I want the kingdom spouse that God has graced just for me at the appointed time. No time sooner than God wants it to happen. I do not want to be unready. I don't want the person to be unready. I want us to be exactly where we need to be together. I want to change the world in the way that God sees fit. Let His will, not my will, be done. That's what I want for my life. Every single thing. You know, it could be a materialistic thing. And it's not that I want to idolize the materialistic thing. I just don't want to settle for less than what God could ever give me. I want every single thing because the sky is the limit. God, beyond the sky is the limit. God can literally do anything. He can make the impossible possible. And I want everything. I don't want to just settle for better. I want God's best.